So welcome back to another YouTube video. This is all about differentiating is, was, and were in Spanish. This is a question I get all the time, and I think a lot of people get this confused because they just don't know what it is conceptually, and especially when it comes to just saying, hey, I just want to be able to say, hey, was in the past, and you need to know if it's estaba, estuvo, or fue, or era, and I'm going to break down this is all the different ways to say is, was, and were, what you see on the screen. Hopefully don't mind this microphone, by the way. I'm trying this headset. Sometimes the audio is a bit different than what it normally is, but it's also pretty clear. So let me know if you don't like it. But these are all the different ways to say this in different tenses. I'm going to break down what they are conceptually. I'm not going to go into too much detail. You might have already seen this stuff before. But basically, over here, this is the present tense. This is all, by the way, this part here is estar. This bottom part here is ser. And I have videos on ser versus estar, so you have to know the difference. Those are the two ways to say to be: is, was, am, are, etc. But here we've got the present tense, we've got the preterite tense, and we've got the imperfect tense. And these two ways, these two here, are both the past tense. All right, the way to say was or were. Now let's break this down just real quick. Estar here, this is the present tense, so we've got I am, you are, he, she, it, someone's name is, we are, they are. Obviously, so I didn't put the subject here, but I think if you've seen verb conjugation charts in Spanish long enough, you know, like, hey, this is the subject breakdown. Now, I didn't put vosotros. Vosotros is how you say you all in Spain, and this would be, for example, estáis. But it's just more to put. So if you're worried about vosotros, maybe you're not worried. I'm just not going to include it today. But I teach both typically. So, anyways, we've got present. So I am using estar. So this is I am, you are, he, she, we are, etc. And this is the same exact thing. It's just using ser. And remember, just a brief breakdown. You know, they'd say ser is for more permanent things. I like to think of ser as just what something literally is. I am a singer. It's what I am. But I am sick, or I am here right now. Those things are temporary. Those things are location. That's estar. So whenever you're just describing like what something actually is, you're going to use one of these. And whenever you're just describing something like, hey, I was taking the trash out, I am taking the trash out, something I'm doing right now temporarily in the moment, I am not feeling well right now, I am making a video right now, that's all estar. Okay, so that's what you need to know. But let's break this down a bit. I think that the present's easy, right? And I'll probably delete it from the screen in a second, because this is just I am here, right? Or I am a man, okay? What people really seem to struggle with is when it comes to differentiating these. So we've got either the preterite tense and the imperfect. So the first step is identifying, and I'll give you tips because this might seem like a lot to like go through and identify. If you're just trying to speak naturally, flowing your conversations, you're just trying to get things out, then you don't have time to think about these concepts a lot. So that's what practice is for. And I'm going to show you how to practice in a minute with some examples so that when you actually are in those conversations with some native speakers, you're not sounding as much like a robot. You're able to just, immediately go to the right option. So when we've got the first step is it said or estar? Like if I wanted to say he was in his room, well, first step is a said or estar? Estar in this case because we're talking about a location. Okay, so now we've got to figure out, first of all, in his room is en su cuarto. That's how we say in his room. We don't have to put the subject, we don't have to put el. And what we're really trying to figure out is this was, right? Is it estuvo? Is it estaba? Is it fue? Or is it era? Those are the four options that we have now to say was for him. And so, when in doubt, I always say, when in doubt, use the imperfect. This is the imperfect. So think of like estaba is imperfect for estar. because you've got estabas, estaba, estaba, estábamos, estaban. So if you can remember that aba, that estaba, then you're just going to have to add on habamos for nosotros, and en if it's you all or them, and an s if it's you, and for everything else it's just estaba. So that is the imperfect. When in doubt, use imperfect unless you know that it was a completed action. And I'm going to show you exactly what that means in this example in a second. And here you just got to remember era. Era, eras for you. You know, you've got amos again, éramos, and then eran with an n at the end. Now, in this case, is this a completed action, which would be preterite, the estuvo? We already know it's estar, or is it an ongoing action, which is estaba? And it could be both. Okay, so that's why this confuses people a lot, because if I were to say estuvo en su cuarto, this would imply that I'm kind of saying he was in his room, but he's not anymore, because it's like a completed action, meaning that he was there, but he's no longer there. He was in his room, he's definitely not there anymore, I'm sure of that. And estaba is more like, yeah, he was in his room, and he's still there, or he probably is still there, I don't know. And so it's also one of these things where a lot of people get so worked up on this, but it's not that big of a deal if you're not perfect, because there's kind of a gray area when it comes to this type of stuff. Now, the exception might be, you know, maybe with fue and era, you want to be a little bit more careful than with estuvo or estaba. I'd say that there's a lot of gray area when it comes to estar in terms of just sounding not too wrong. Because sometimes in Spanish, when you're learning, it's just about not sounding that wrong. Like, people try to be perfect, and the perfectionists are the ones that struggle the most with learning a language. I was one, so I wanted everything to sound perfect, and when I let go of that, my Spanish actually got more perfect. It got better. And so, if I take another example, like, he was sick yesterday. So whenever you're talking about like a state of being or how you're feeling, that's estar, because you might be sick, but that doesn't mean you're going to be sick tomorrow. Now, if you wanted to say he is a sick person, that would be said because it's describing what someone or something is. So it could be enfermo ayer is sick yesterday. So again, we've just got to figure out this he was part, and we know it's estar, and so it could be either one. Again, if I say estuvo enfermo ayer, estuvo is more like saying, yeah, he was sick, but he's better today, or he's not anymore. And estaba enfermo is like, yeah, he was sick yesterday, but he's still sick today, you know. And you can just change the subjects. I was sick, it would still be estaba for this form, but if it were the preterite tense, it would be estuve enfermo if you wanted to use the preterite. So you can practice your own examples, take these examples and make them with different subjects. All right, so with when it comes to this stuff, right, there is some gray area, especially with the stud. And when it comes to said, we'll do a few examples here. Like, by the way, this can mean was and were, but it can also mean went. So fui can either be I went, like you went, he, she went, we went, etc., or it can be I was, you were, he, they, we were, they were, etc. So it's completely interchangeable. Don't think of it as like, oh my gosh, this is so confusing. Think of it as like, hey, I have less to learn now, right? So be more positive when it comes to learning new vocabulary. But if I wanted to say, he was a good person. Fue una buena persona. Like, let's just take a let's analyze this for a second. If I say he was a good person using fue, and we know that preterite is for completed actions, it kind of sounds like he's dead, right? And this is actually a lot of times when you're describing the type of person somebody was, or their occupation, like he was a doctor, he was this, he was a lawyer, all of his life. It kind of implies that they're no longer with us because it was a completed action, like their life is complete, so he's no longer here. Now, if we say era una buena persona, this is more like, yeah, he was a good person. He still is. He still continues to be a good person because he's still alive. So think of it. Hopefully, this helps you, like, just conceptually to know, is it complete or not? And that's why I always default to, let's just default to estaba. Let's default to era, the imperfect, unless we know 100% that, hey, it is preterite. We know that it's preterite. And I think that'll help you with any verb, not just with these verbs, but any verb in the Spanish language when it comes to the past tense. Let's do another example with one of these. The exam was difficult. Ese examen fue difícil. And this is pretty easy to just say, hey, fue. If you wanted to say the party was fun, fue divertida, la fiesta, the exam was difficult, it's implying that, hey, the party was fun, but it's over. We're describing what the party was. It was fun. We're describing what the exam was. It was difficult, and we more than likely finished the exam. So that's when we can pretty much go through fue because we know that it's over with, it's done. Whereas you could say, like, maybe if we're saying, like, oh yeah, back in the days of that class that we took years ago, those exams were always difficult. That could be, esos exámenes eran difíciles, like they were. Because we're kind of just describing, we're kind of just saying, like, yeah, they were always hard. By the way, the words always and used to always trigger the imperfect, okay? So if we were to say the exams were always difficult, it would be los exámenes siempre eran difíciles, okay? And that'll always trigger the imperfect. The use of used to and always. But again, conceptually, we kind of look at it and we're like, okay, we're just describing that the exams were always tough. You could say siempre fueron difíciles, but it doesn't sound quite that right. And that's where we kind of, again, have a little bit of gray area. So that's why when people freak out, I was one of these people, by the way, when I learned, people always freak out over this concept when you need to give yourself some grace. And give yourself some grace so that you just continue the flow of the conversation so that you're not stopping mid conversation trying to get it perfect. You just keep the conversation going, you say what you need to say, and if it's really, really wrong, native speaker will probably correct you, and then you won't make that mistake again. And now you can, at least when you make that mistake, you can point to why conceptually it should have been the other one, and hopefully that helps. So again, a lot of these videos I try to make them just straight to the point as possible, more like, hey, here's the concept, here's what it does, here's what it means, here's what it feels like, versus just giving you some complicated grammar rule. I want you to feel the language. I want you to feel why this stuff is the way it is. So, by the way, and if you like my teaching method, if you're interested in learning Spanish with me, want to learn more, I've got a free training that I highly recommend you to check out. I know that you'll get a ton out of it if you're a serious Spanish learner. It's all about my methodology that allowed me to become fluent in Spanish much quicker than the average person. It's how you can become fluent in Spanish this year and be having real conversations with Spanish speakers within just a matter of months. I just show you what to focus on, what not to focus on, and at the end, you'll hear more about my full Spanish program if you're interested in continuing your Spanish learning journey with me. You get a very big discount as well, a couple bonus programs added by signing up for that free training. So whether you want to be a part of that program or not, definitely check out the free training. It's got my 3 strategies on how to become fluent faster and accelerate your Spanish learning. The link to that will be in the description of this video. I really hope that you got a lot out of this video. I appreciate you watching. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already so that you get updates. Make sure that you're notified for new videos. Give the video a like if you want more. Comment any questions you have. Thanks for the support. I really appreciate you guys. See you in the next video. Ciao.